Ondo working with JPMorgan and Mastercard and Ripple on the XRP Ledger. And this is something which kind of blew my mind because I was never expecting, out of all companies and out of all blockchains, I didn't expect JPMorgan to work with Ripple on the XRP Ledger. I thought like this is the last place JPMorgan would want to be. The tokenized bond from Ondo, the token OUSG, was actually tokenized on XRPL and then redeemed natively without smart contracts.
I mean, to me, that's amazing. Once you have like everything that you appreciate about blockchain, but you can use it actually in TradFi seamlessly, that's the superpower. Because currently it's like you have all the amazing things on your phone, all the stuff, and then when you try to access it into the TradFi, that's like, oh yeah, I need to go through all these intermediaries. But if you have it a seamless process, even though if it would go through an intermediary, but the seamless process, then things become much easier.
Hey and welcome to Krippenreiter TV, our weekly series on Monday, hosted by me, Krippenreiter, and my regular co-host Vet. Last week we heard about the Clarity Bill finally moving forward with bipartisan support from the Senate Banking Committee, Ripple's Ripple Prime expanding further with a new partnership with Neuberger, and the highlight probably that everyone is talking about, the proof of concept that brought together giants like JPMorgan, Mastercard, Ripple and Ondo. But there's also more on the technical side as well, as we saw with the introduction of a new server version for XRP Ledger that also shipped a new amendment to clean up code and fix a lot of security issues. But before we go into all of that, hey Vet, what were your first few days like as a communications director of the new XRP Ledger Foundation?
Well, it started immediately with two things, where we had first the XRP Ledger update that sort of has to be very fast communicated. At the same time, we had the announcement of the team, so that sort of overlapped. Yeah, it wasn't like as planned, right? I mean, it's just the nature of the things where you have fixes that come in and then you need to communicate it. But actually went like very, very smooth. We communicated in the morning the update. I'm lucky to also have seen that everybody, not everybody, but most people have updated from the UNL. So we are right now in activation. And but aside from the first day, which was a good start, it's really fantastic that we can really get going with all the initiatives that we have planned. Right now, it's more or less establishing all the channels with everybody and see sort of what's the current status and where we go from there. I mentioned last time the Discord, which is I'm still trying to get into contact with a specific person to support on that end, but. The rollout of the branding is doing really great. I would say we also created the comms channel for updates. That will be automated, by the way, in the future. Okay. Right now, it's not automated, but that will be automated by Dennis, so everybody can see what's going on there. We also collaborate now with other people. Like we have seen what Flare is doing. And they've been using a lot of things with the XRP Ledger. So that's, of course, a really great way to amplify what we have on the XRP Ledger. But no, overall, it's fantastic. Very, very happy. And seeing like all of my team members also really dig into their domain is just really fantastic. Dennis is like already cooking, insane stuff, I can tell you. Brett is laying out a bunch of stuff. He's already like marching forward. And you guys should definitely learn more about Renee because from the operation side. So you're going to see we're going to sponsor two events that just immediately that I wanted to have going in is the Chain of Block Summit. So when people are seeing this episode, so in 2 days, so when you see this 2 days into the future, you will see the Chain of Blocks event going live. And like Wietz is going to be there. Dennis is going to be there as well. And a bunch of builders and folks in Malta. We're very lucky to support that. With one other community event, but that's not yet public. It's a smaller one. that's sort of the immediate things.
Nice. Let's going on. I saw the XRP Ledger Foundation X account got a revamp. Then the XRP Operations account just launched as well. This is where you will find the news on the new versions that came out. And this is probably also where we will learn more about the details as well, right? About the details on new amendments and what got fixed and everything. What you usually probably will only see on GitHub, which will be present there as well, right?
Correct. Okay. The whole idea is definitely to segregate basically audiences to different comms channels, because we have different groups of people who have different needs. Developers and infrastructure providers want lots of posts that are detailed about what they want to see. So that's primarily this. And on the main foundation side, that sort of ecosystem updates, right, is more agnostic and less about really the heavy technical stuff. I mean, when there's something interesting that correlates to everybody, then you will see it. But it was very important for me that we start segregating specifically this comms channel with potentially more different comms channels. For different groups, if it makes sense. I mean, you can think of developers, right, like just builders and others, but I don't see it like for an immediate need, because those people are typically taken care of by our regional hubs, XRPL Commons in Europe, XRP Asia and APAC, and all those. But yeah, that's for the comms on X.
Yeah, I think it generally feels like things are getting more professional in general, I think. Not just for XRP Ledger Foundation or XRP, but for the space as well, right? We now launched XRP Ledger Foundation, and you are already making good progress on the comms, but I think the foundation as well is way more present now. And what is also way more present right now is all the political stuff going on. And one part that is getting more traction right now is the Clarity Act. And this is something we were waiting for a long time, which at some point it felt like it will never come, because both parties were kind of not able to find a compromise that fits. But it seems like, and I saw this with Coinbase as well, I saw this with Armstrong from Coinbase, he's also fine with it right now, which kind of feels like, okay, now it's going in the right direction, we are moving forward. And as I said in the beginning, the committee, the Senate Banking Committee, actually approved bipartisan the Clarity Act, at least from this side. But there are more steps that are coming, which is why we still need a few more months, maybe. We will see. The next step will be also the Agriculture Committee that has also already, as Ms. Crypto is telling here, has already done its homework. So there's a lot already in the move. But the next thing is basically to merge both bills into one and then get the full Senate also as well bipartisan support to vote for it. And then the last step is Trump's signature, which I think will happen really quickly. As far as I know, Trump was already pushing out
he's definitely in favor.
He's in favor. I think the consensus is as soon as this Clarity Act is on his table, it will be signed and it's gone. Yep. It will be live instantly. So there's not much left, but still, I mean, maybe
there's still uncertainty if you look at Polymarket or like these. It's like at 70%, so there's like 30% uncertainty. So it's not 100% safe. A lot of people think, it's 100%. If it were 100% safe, then everybody we
would know.
But there is some uncertainty, but it's a lot more likely now. Like now, it's a lot more likely for it to go through. And I mean, listen, it's great to have actual codified into law some protection, some guardrails, and specific just mentions about blockchains and how things should be acted, like self-custody and like DeFi is also touched a little bit in different sections. And that's great, because at the end of the day, if we have none of this, then the problem is always a future administration could come in and just, lay it out differently and just have something else. So we might actually have really gotten with this the best deal possible, as David was saying, sort of with Coinbase, pulling out, but they actually didn't want to pull out, but they just tried to get like the best deal to get like everybody back to the table. The car salesman tactic, which was actually really good.
It worked.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm curious. 70% runabout is for it to come into law in 2026. 30% not. I would be surprised if it would not come into law,
same.
but I mean, you never know.
True. But what do you think would this mean for the broader crypto sphere? Like, it feels like, as it is a market structure build, it feels like it's the same like back with the .com times when it started. Like, we had the regulation and then the .com scene basically arrived. And I feel like it could be the same for crypto, right?
Yeah, I think David also mentioned this in XRP Vegas or so when people interviewed him. And it seems to be indeed like, actually very crucial.
Yeah.
But of course, expectation management, like don't think this is like sort of the that thing that's going to moon it or something like this, like immediate. I think the long-term implications, are very important. The short-term, I don't know really. It's with 70% likelihood per poly market and those prediction markets, it should be priced in, right? It should be priced in, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that there will always be people speculating on it, and there will probably, I don't know, but I could imagine like a price bump that gets sold immediately, which happens pretty often actually. When we think, like you posted this one meme post when everything is green and we have the feeling like the XRP community can look up to the sky and now it's green.
Yeah.
But in reality, like if we look one day or even 2 days after, it's basically mostly always back there where it started.
It's basically it's always like a flash, and it's always like people are fighting each other, and then they look up shortly, and it's like an ever meme. It's like it never becomes boring.
So what we have to do is, I think we have to bring lasting value to the space. And so we have to do a little bit more. But what we can do is we can build on XRP Ledger and leverage XRP a lot more. And what Ripple is doing to do this is they're partnering with Neuberger on a 200 million debt facility, which will help Ripple Prime to offer more services, have more liquidity. And this in general is very important because for people maybe to understand why this is important, it's important because you can actually use XRP in Ripple Prime as collateral. And I think this is what people not really get right now, because they think it's only for post-trade settlement on XRPL. And this is something we're all looking forward to, which will happen at some point. And then we have the lending protocol where we may think it could be used in Ripple Prime as well. But something that is already working right now is using XRP as collateral in Ripple Prime. Not in a gigantic spectrum, but it's there. And anything that's left right now is just scale. We have to scale now. And this is why these kinds of partnerships are important, because this is what brings scale to the table. And this is why it's important. But why do you think maybe not just Ripple Prime, but the Ripple products in general, why will this bring lasting value to XRP?
I like to cite Fig here from Squid Router, and I really recall like one space that I think I had with him, where I was like saying, hey, sort of, as an outside, what kind of tips do you have? So for the XRP community, strength, weaknesses, what should we sort of double down on, and others? He said, to be honest, whenever you see like synergies with the XRP Ledger and Ripple, support that, because they have a lot of leverage to bring people to the chain as a huge institution, right? Like themselves with great connections in business, and having those people on your side, sort of in your team as XRP community, that's great. Should support. So with all of the products, whatever and how much it touches the XRP Ledger, it's great, right?
True.
Some products will touch more the XRP Ledger than others. They touch multiple chains as well. It all comes down to your thesis and really if you see it as a net benefit or not, right? For me, it's a huge net benefit to have a builder like Ripple being so behind XRP and outspoken, right? Even though they are chain agnostic, right? With the products. They are XRP family and part of the fam, and so from my point of view, how it brings lasting value is the more successful they become with the product that they built on the XRP Ledger or utilize the XRP Ledger, the more your thesis should shift. Okay, the more people use, let's say, a Ripple product that is also chain agnostic. If the XRP Ledger is the most efficient, right, and is the most suitable for, let's say, payment, settlement, custody, then automatically it will carve out, share of that market, and it come back to the ledger.
Right. It will gravitate towards the XRP Ledger automatically if we're talking about institutionalized DeFi without smart contracts. There are benefits that only the XRPL brings, and this is something which Ripple can leverage. And if they are successful, this will have lasting impact on XRP as well. And you don't really have to always use the XRP Ledger. You can also use XRP elsewhere. Like, as you said in the beginning with Flare, you can use it elsewhere. You can, or for example, you can loan out XRP, or you can use it on exchanges. There are many ways to bring value to XRP, which should at some point help move the price in some way, right?
Right. I mean, I love to also cite that the more people basically see that all of the things that we are building is and the value of it, the more it will, of course, like attract to the ledger. Think of very simply, as you said, everything's being native and it's plug and play. That is value. That is very valuable for especially like newcomers, institutions, and so on. And maybe that explains also sort of why there's a lagging adoption curve versus, let's say, more retail-driven chains, because the benefits, right, of the XRP Ledger are particularly maybe more appreciated by institutions.
True.
And once you have like those people more in, and then the adoption curve will change and look more differently. Yeah. I think the space stays like very, very interesting. It all comes down to your thesis, really.
True. And it will stay competitive, which is funny sometimes, because we know Ripple usually was pretty competitively working kind of against JPMorgan, but right now they are working with them and collaborating, actually, which is the news that came out the other day, which is Ondo working with JPMorgan and Mastercard and Ripple on the XRP Ledger. And this is something which kind of blew my mind, because I was never expecting, out of all companies and out of all blockchains, I didn't expect JPMorgan to work with Ripple on the XRP Ledger. Like I thought like this is like the last place JPMorgan would want to be. Like obviously they are using Kinexys to actually settle USD value in the end, but the tokenized bond from Ondo, the token OUSG, was actually tokenized on XRPL and then redeemed like natively without smart contracts.
Yeah, and it shows just, even though like JP Morgan and I believe in that funnel, they were like more towards the end.
Yeah.
And Ripple and Ondo were in the beginning of it with the XRP Ledger.
Right.
It can all seamlessly plug in, right?
Right.
And so whether someone is directly connected to the XRP Ledger or not, you will at least find one hop to complete that. And it just shows that blockchain technology can be plugged into the plumbing of the traditional finance,
right,
and then give like people all the benefits of it with 24/7 settlement, access, self-custody. That's, I mean, to me, that's amazing. Like once you have like everything that you appreciate about blockchain, but you can use it actually in TradFi seamlessly.
Right.
That's the superpower. Because currently it's like you have all the amazing things on your phone, all the stuff, and then when you try to access it into the TradFi, that's like, oh yeah, I need to like go through all these intermediaries.
True.
But if you have it a seamless process, even though if it would go through an intermediary, but the seamless process, then things become much easier.
Right. And I don't think it has to be the end product. We can actually also exchange, let's say, Kinexys from JPMorgan with Ripple payments, for example. You can settle via ODL on XRPL if you want. You can do it. It's just that in this proof of concept, or in this kind of pilot phase, they were using Ondo on XRPL in a way that only works for tokenization. So what happened is Ondo processed Ripple's OUSG redemption on the XRP Ledger, and Mastercard took this information and routed it to JPMorgan's Kinexys. And then JPMorgan settled the USD value and delivered the USD amount to Ripple's Singapore bank account. So you have internationally settled value using many products, many institutions on XRPL, at least from the start, and then you will end up where you wanted to have your funds. So it's the proof that it works, right?
And just let me remind, and that's a great list that you made, is as long as we have such news in crypto, right? Oh, this is like the first time we did this, and I just want to urge people, because people are so quick to say, oh, it's like this or that, like go into the extremes. If something is over, it's lost, or it's won, or something like this. It's still very early. You see, it's very, very early. And I think the interesting stuff is still ahead of us. We're just starting to see how they work.
I mean, you have to understand, they would never put in the money and the work and their time to build something like this or prove that this is working if it wasn't valuable for them for the long term. Because these institutions, they don't have time to speculate on something that they think will not last at least a year. So the moment they choose Ripple and XRP Ledger, it's proof in some sense that crypto in general, but especially XRP Ledger, has lasting value for them, or else they wouldn't use it, right?
Yep.
And then I got also another question on top of this was, does it use XRP vet? This is something I get all the time.
I mean, please, you should answer this, because I'm the amount of people who are just saying, but it's not using XRP is like, how can you say that? It just makes no sense. Like, it's on the XRP ledger.
Right.
How can it not use XRP? And if you say like where it uses XRP, then it's like, oh, why are they using like issued assets? Like people think everybody should just use XRP. Like no issued asset. It's like this was never like the design philosophy of the XRP ledger.
Right.
It started like with the idea of the consensus, and then a decentralized exchange is useful for it, and a decentralized exchange is only useful with issued assets.
True.
So
in 2012,
you should be a fan of issued assets. You should love issued assets. But every time you see an issued asset, for me, you can tell me if you see it differently, but it seems to be that the community sees it as an enemy to XRP. Like, oh, there's an issued asset. No, I don't want to use it to you.
I think
so wrong thinking.
Yeah, definitely wrong, because I think people don't really understand the differences, and it's at this point. Yeah, I feel like I've said this like 100 and thousands times, but the counterparty-free nature of XRP is like the superpower, which is the most extreme difference between issued assets that is bound to an issuer and the counterparty and bound to a jurisdiction. And then you have XRP on the other hand, counterparty free, jurisdictionless, cannot be like copied. The supply is kept. It's bound to math and rules that the XRP Ledger enforces.
And this is, by the way, something that I like more about the Bitcoin community, where a lot more people there are mindful about that. Like it's decentralized money, it's neutral money, it's a store of value. Like these, like they're more aware of the properties of Bitcoin. And on the XRP Ledger or in the XRP community, people are a lot less aware of these properties about XRP, which are similar, as you said, with Bitcoin. They typically say, oh, it's like fast, cheap, and so on. Yes, but don't forget like the core things that you just mentioned. And if you are aware of that, then you see no competition to it, right?
True,
it's neutral money. There's no counterparty. It's the only asset on the XRP Ledger that is that way. There's no competition to it. And if you actually value neutral, censorship resistant, nobody can like freeze your XRP in your self-custody wallet. I mean, that in itself is just huge utility value.
Right. It cannot be frozen. It cannot be clawback. This is the exit hatch for wherever you want to go. You can use XRP to reach your destination.
Exactly.
And also,
I would never come to the idea that it would like RLUSD or these other issued assets would be a threat to it.
Yeah.
Because they're not comparable even. Like you could say stable coins amongst each other are competitors, right?
True.
RLUSD to maybe a different stable coin or a different stable coin, But amongst the stable coins or issued assets on a specific given ledger, the native asset is always king. I mean, and people are not talking about this enough. Really, I have to say.
Yeah, we have to highlight also on the XRPL AMM what is the biggest currency pair that exists, that trades the most, that has the most liquidity inside it, it's
XRP.
Ripple USD XRP pair. And you cannot build a pair with Ripple USD and Ripple USD. That doesn't work. You always have to pair some form of asset with the native currency XRP to make the most sense. Because if your token is liquid to XRP, it is always also liquid to everything else because of auto bridging. Because XRP can also be, or is always in the middle if it makes sense. If XRP is able to make your price more or better, like more price efficient, it will always trade for you in a way that is advantageous for you as a trader.
That's why I never understood like these people when they say, or Tom, from Swift, when he says, well, nobody is going to use, let's say, XRP as a bridge asset. You are not actively using it as a bridge. It automatically does it.
It's in the background.
You're not going to actively say, hey, I'm going to use XRP or I'm not going to use XRP as a bridge asset. It automatically happens, as you say, if it gives you a better conversion.
True.
It's sort of a service. The XRP Ledger makes you like it's a service for you. So it's
it's automated and it's in the background and it's happening all the time already. Like you made this like animation where you saw like
we talked about it here.
All the currency conversions happening through XRP. Like this is the proof that it's working. Sure, you have to scale out.
Yeah, we talked about it in your show, and it's such a wrong mental model. So
True.
I hope really people, when they see this, is be aware what XRP really the properties are.
Yes.
And don't be shy to look what how the Bitcoiners treat like Bitcoin, because it's the same properties.
True.
And also the privileged role of XRP on the ledger. And I hope that people get more educated. I'm also mindful with that. A lot of people in the community, they have maybe 5 or 10 minutes time per day because their day is so busy. Family, 2, maybe 3 jobs, whatever is very busy. So they have just 5-10 minutes, read headlines, right? And it's just hard to then dig into these things. So I'm mindful of that.
Yeah. I mean, also to answer the question that we posed at the beginning, to circle back, you cannot use the XRP ledger without XRP. It's impossible. And there are 3 reasons for this. First, to use an XRPL account, you have to activate the account. And to activate the account, you need a reserve. And the reserve is locked for the time that you want your XRPL account to be used. And if you want to delete the XRPL account, you get some of it back. But in order to use the XRPL account, you have to log in a reserve. The same for tokenized assets. As soon as you own something on the XRP ledger, could be a trust line, could be an NFT, could be an escrow that you created, or could be the OUSG tokenized asset, you will also again have to lock up reserves against the spam. And then the third part is the transactions. Whenever you do a transaction, and it doesn't matter which one, even if it's a non-value transaction like a memo, like you want to transact and all you want to do is send the information out, let's say for bridging purposes, even this non-value message transaction on XRPL will burn XRP. Not much because it's not scaled right now, but it's happening. Like you have this deflationary nature of XRP on the XRPL.
Yeah, we need to record this and just in loop, just let people like listen to this in loop. And
I think it's important to understand this, because if you always ask, is XRP used, you are also already like confirming that you haven't understood that XRPL accounts cannot work without XRP. The whole XRP ledger doesn't work without XRP. So XRP is always used.
Exactly.
Right. But the XRPL is moving forward as well. And then this time in layers. So Dennis, the CTO, the new CTO of XRP Ledger Foundation, he built something that is pretty new for most people, I think. It's something David Schwartz already spoke about in 2019, I think. This was the first time where he spoke about it. But it's something Nick Bougalis also worked on. And now it seems like Dennis has caught up to it and actually now wants to build this as well. And there is this consensus kind of proof of concept that he built, which is fascinating. Yeah. And it's a dual chain approach, embedded rollup proof of concept, where there are 2 layers. And the layer 1 is the outer chain. So the chain we already know, kinda. This is the chain which settles every 3 to 4 seconds right now. But then there's also a layer 2 inner chain. And this one can settle a lot faster. you can scale a lot more. So this could help scaling as well. So let's see how it looks. Here you can see on the top how it settles. It's pretty fascinating. Just 18 seconds. Let's go.
Yeah, you see the blocks moving.
The blocks are moving.
Yeah.
And you can also see layer 2. Every second there's a new block.
Faster.
It's way faster. And on top, layer 1, it's the usual 3 seconds.
First of all, you see, that's always, by the way, with Dennis. He's so fast with giving like these test networks out, prototyping. Yeah. He's very, very fast with it.
Yeah.
It's, he's an idea. Oh yeah, I built it here. I have it all done.
It's crazy.
That's typically, the follow-up. But it's an idea that goes back to, he says, to David Fueling and Joel Katz, which I know that Joel Katz did, the David Schwartz did a post about, the inner-outer consensus and what they can achieve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bugales as well.
And
right? 2-layer consensus.
And the interesting thing with this is this inner chain, which is like sort of the new stuff, which can move faster, so it can have a higher TPS, and it can have different features. True. So it can have derivatives. We talked about this on your channel, derivatives, options, whatever, new features, and you can move a value between the inner and outer chain very seamless. Like it's easier, which solves this liquidity fragmentation with the side chains, and it also gives apparently robustness.
True.
To if like one of the chains sort of holds or has an issue or something like this, then as long as the other one is running, you can still work. But it uses actually the main chain that we know as sort of the settlement layer, as the finality layer. So layer 1, layer 2, very similar to Ethereum, if you think about it, how that would work. One thing, it does not use ZKPs. So it's actually, I think so the layer 2 writes into the layer 1, like actually, and because it's it writes into it. So they really sync together, and therefore there are sorts of edge cases I heard, like what happens if they lose the sync? Like what if one chain takes longer consensus than the other? Is the other going to stall? There are some edge cases, I believe, but very, very interesting idea. Very, very interesting. It would definitely change like how the XRP Ledger would look like.
Right, and it kind of also cements the core idea of settlement, like settlement being the core characteristics of the ledger that we all know about, like the ledger that closes every 3 to 4 seconds. Why is it great? Because it's really perfectly built for settlement. It does settlement really well. So everything that it doesn't well, you can offload it somewhere else via ZK, for example, as we learned with Anshel last time. You can build like the layer on top to make maybe scaling a lot faster or better. Like you don't have to actually implement all the stuff on the XRP Ledger that we love. So we don't have to change it, right?
Do you think we have already too many features on the layer 1 that we now realize, hey, actually we should put them maybe on different layers?
Yeah, good question.
Is there a better settlement layer that we could have built, but we actually made it a little bit worse by...
I mean, there are probably a lot of features that we found out are not so much used. The question is, are they not used because like someone didn't build a product for it, or are they not used because they are useless? The good thing in the end, like a few years back, you could have said enacting smart contracts on XRPL would have been the better choice because then you would have more products. But right now it feels like the fact that we didn't implement smart contracts made XRPL better in the sense of making settlement on XRPL better. Because we didn't implement smart contracts, made settlement on XRPL more focused and more powerful, I would say. So I still think there are probably certain features that like, for example, NFTs. I don't know if you want XRPL to be a good settlement chain for institutional DeFi, I don't know if you need NFTs. But then again, NFTs are needed, for example, on Ethereum. You need NFTs to do Uniswap-based liquidity provisioning. So there is a use for NFT, but then again, do we need NFTs, or is maybe multi-purpose token what we actually need? An NFT should be something that we could put on another layer or maybe offload it somewhere else. So I think we should, in general, think a lot more about what we want to enact at all. And this is something I think we should slow down a lot more. We should come to consensus on what we really want. And if this is something we also want in, let's say, 3 years, we shouldn't enact features or new things that we think make sense now because of a narrative or hype. And I think we kind of understood this now. And now is the time really to focus on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals on DeFi are DEX and lending. These are everything in DeFi revolves around building a vault. Like for asset managers, you need a vault, and then you need lending because you need people to lend out money for them to earn money back. And then you need DEXs to build liquidity or aggregate liquidity for your tokenized assets. But that's basically it. You don't really need an AMM. You also could do the same thing with the limit order book. In our case, we use both, but we actually don't really need it. We could also do the CLOP thing as long as we have a way to aggregate liquidity. But I think these are the 3 core pillars that we have to focus on. And I think we're doing this really, really great right now. And the moment we enact single asset vaults and lending, we kind of have it all, I would say. Like you can expand these with smart extensions or add certain features on top of these primitives that we have enacted. But generally speaking, I think there is not really much that is left. Like the multipurpose token as well is pretty expanding as well. It's pretty big. Like there are many use cases that are covered with multipurpose tokens. It's all there.
I would also look into iterating about existing features.
Right. Exactly.
Versus adding new, right? Like you could say, hey, if you don't like how, let's say, IUs work, maybe we can look at IUs. If NFTs, look at NFTs, AMMs, and so on. Instead of saying, okay, let's just create something completely new. Because I feel like NPTs is sort of that thing, right? Where we say, okay, we create something new. I mean, I don't know if that's feasible or not. We are not that technical, but I think we should always attempt to see if we can use the existing and maybe modify that as much as possible.
Would you say there is one feature that you would like to be removed? Like, is there something you think that has no use case on XRPL?
That's a good question, right? Honestly, in this whole, where does DID come into place? I feel like that's
DID is a good example.
DID would come to my mind because with permission domains, credentials. So credentials, permission domains, permission DEX, or permission domains into a vault, right? That works. DID is still sort of standalone. It's very standalone, and as a standalone feature,
It's part of the identity stack, but where does it make sense on XRPL, right? If it's not combined with another feature, why would I propose an DID on my account for what kind of purpose?
There's not much usage of it. That's the
True.
thing, right? That's that combined. It's a standalone feature, not much used, questionable. Why
But maybe it makes sense, and there's just one little thing missing that we have to add. But then we go back to what you said. We have to focus on what is already there. If we have DID already, we decided that we want DID, but now something is missing, and we found out that the ID right now, the way it is built, is not working perfectly. Maybe we should actually do a lot of research to find out, okay, how can we enhance DID in a way that makes it usable again?
Yeah, and you never want to add things just for maybe we need it later.
True, yeah.
This is not great. Yeah, that's not a strategy either.
Yeah, I mean, one good strategy is evolving, building, and also advancing and building updates and making it possible for the XRP Ledger to get rid of security issues and refactor code as well. And this is why the new XRP Ledger, so Ripple D version 3.1.3. came out, and it has this cleanup amendment that not many people talk about. It has this default yes flag enabled, so the moment you update your node, you are instantly voting yes on it. Why that?
Yeah, so this is a new update, as you said, and it has only one amendment in it, which is the fix cleanup amendment. And it's a default yes, because it's one that is fixing a lot of very important parts of the protocol that need attention right now. Okay, so they get addressed with this amendment, and once we have it passed. Right now it's above 80% already. 11 days until activation of this amendment. We can like publish more information about the nature of the fix, what is exactly fixing, like in detail, in very, very detail, we can go into. Right now we cannot really do it because we first want to have it like passed. But once that's done, so because it's now already in activation, and 1 week ago it was released. Shout out to all the validators for updating.
Yes.
Great job, everybody. Is that all the network who is relying on the XRP Ledger needs to be careful not to be amendment blocked. You are not amendment blocked if you update to the newest version. If you're not updating to the newest version, and you can see this here, everything below 3.1.3, that's like all of that. Yeah, that's below. There would be amendment blocked. Being amendment blocked means you cannot communicate with the XRP Ledger anymore. So if you submit a transaction through such a node, it will not land. You need to update. One simple update and you are back again. Primarily exchanges, so please update your nodes. Projects on the XRP Ledger, DEX, platforms, NFT marketplaces, tools, update your nodes to not have amendment blocked and have service interruptions for your users.
Yes, because the nodes, the moment you are amendment blocked because you cannot understand the rules of the network anymore. Because new rules are getting enacted, so the amendment will introduce new rules, basically. Could be a new transactor or something. And the old nodes that are not updated don't understand these nodes. So you could end up with something happening that you don't want to happen on the XRP Ledger. So to get rid of this, let's say, chance or probability, the XRP Ledger has the security feature of amendment blocking these kinds of nodes.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean,
please update.
Just update if you don't want to get interrupted in your products.
Yes,
just update. I mean, there's still a lot like these guys. They will all get amendment blocked right now. Yes, there's still time.
Right now they would be all amendment blocked.
There are also like XP Market, for example. Like there's some still on the older version. So in case someone from these guys are listening right now, or if you have a node right here and you see yourself basically in this view, then make sure to update. It's very easy.
Please update.
It's not hard. Also, how long does it take to update? It's like a few minutes, right?
It's just like when you just enter the command, it's just literally one command. I think a minute and 30 seconds is sort of on. I'm generous here. A minute 30 seconds, and you're back syncing to the ledger proposing. Yeah, that's for a validator. So if you have, of course, different nodes, if you have a cluster, so then it takes more time, right? Sure. That's then a real job because until you updated all your infrastructure. But if you have just a validator, 1 to 2 minutes.
Nice. With this, I mean, thank you, Vet. Super easy. I think people should really update their nodes. If you hear this, please update your node. And thanks, Vet, for taking the time to explain to us how this works with the new amendment that came up in the new version. I really hope, everyone, you liked the show today. And until next time, ciao, ciao, guys.
Bye-bye.